In this video, let's talk about how we go back and forth between percentages and fractions. Now, going from a percentage to a fraction is actually not that difficult, because just think about what the word percent means. It means out of 100. And so if you have 57%, then that's simply 57 over 100 written as a fraction. But going from a fraction back into a percentage is another story. So here's actually what we do. Because we're so proficient at going from fractions to decimals and decimals to percentages, we're actually going to use kind of a middleman. So from percentages to fractions, then we'll just call this pretty easy. This is just pretty straightforward. We just go, blank out of 100, and then you have it as a fraction. Maybe you have to simplify, but that's pretty much it. Now, to go from fractions into percentages, we're going to go through a middleman here. From fractions into decimals, we're going to use long division, right? Long division, and we talked about that in a previous video where you literally divide the numerator by the denominator to get a decimal. But then from a decimal to write it as a percentage, that's a pretty easy step as well, because here we're simply going to move the decimal 2 places. And so we're going to use this as kind of a middleman if we're going from fractions back into percentages. So let's look at a couple examples, and we'll explain it in both directions. So let's say we have a fraction 3/5 and we want to write it as a percentage. Well, this is where I'm going to actually go through writing it as a decimal, then converting that into a percentage. So we'll literally take 3 and divide it by 5. So 5's the divisor, 3 is the dividend. Now 5 doesn't go into 3 as a whole number, so I actually need a decimal with a 0, so we'll write 3.0. 5 does go into 30 a total of 6 times. 5 times 6 is 30. We'll subtract, we get a remainder of 0 when we're finished. So I'll take this decimal here and transplant it upwards to the quotient. And so 3/5 would be 0.6. Now keep in mind, this is a decimal. This is not my final answer. Okay, write that as a decimal. And then we're very comfortable converting from decimals into percentages. We'll move this decimal place 1-2 units to the right to turn it into a percentage. So this is equivalent to 60%. So we use decimals as kind of like a middleman. That's what we do when we convert fractions into percentages. Now let's go the other direction. 36%. Well, this is a much more straightforward route. 36% literally by definition means 36 out of 100. 36 out of 100. Well, let's see if we have any common factors here between 36 and 100. I think we have a common factor of 4. 36 is 4 times 9, and 100 is 4 times 25. We can cancel the common factor of 4. And so 36% as a fraction is 9/25. So this is a much more straightforward route. You just write it out of 100 and then simplify your fraction. Let's try a couple more. Let's say we had 14/15. 14/15. This is a fraction. I want to write it as a percentage. So I'm going to first of all write it as a decimal. I'm going to take 14 and literally divide it by 15 using long division. Okay, 15 doesn't go evenly into 14, so I will need to add in a 0.0 to make it large enough. All right, and then I'll ask, okay, 15 goes into 140 how many times without going over? Goes in a total of 9 times. So 9 times 15, we would get 45, and carry the 4, and 9 times 1 is 9, plus 4 makes 13. Subtract, we'll get a leftover of 5, a remainder of 5. We'll drop down a 0, and we'll repeat. 15 goes into 50 a total of 3 times without going over. That would give us 45. We'll subtract, we'll get a 5, bring down another 0, and I already noticed a pattern here. I just got 50 last time, which means it's going to be another 3, and that's going to leave me with another remainder of 5, and I think I'm stuck in a holding pattern here, 3.333 or 0.933333 repeating. I'll take this decimal, write it in the same place for the quotient, and so our answer would be 0.933333 repeating. And to write this shorthand, we'll write 0.93, but since the 3 is what's repeating, I'll put a bar over it, right? Just to indicate to a reader that that 3 is going to repeat forever. So again, it's pretty straightforward to turn a fraction into a decimal. We just use long division. Now we're not done yet because I actually wanted to write this as a percentage as my final answer. So last step is very straightforward. I'll just take this decimal here, move it 2 units to the right. That's how we convert it into a percentage. So this is actually 93.3 repeating percent. Okay, 93%. That makes intuitive sense as well, because 14/15 should be almost 100%, and in fact it's 93.3 repeating percent. All right, let's see here. Last example, 27.5%. So for this, we're going to write it as a fraction. So this would be 27.5 out of 100. And I can actually rearrange these decimal places so I get 2 whole numbers. You can actually think of this as 275 out of 1,000. Just so we're dealing with whole numbers here. And then I would just simply reduce this fraction. So I'd look for any common factors and that sort of thing. So let's see here. I think I've got, a common factor of 25, I believe. Let's see, 1,000 would be 25 times 40. You can check me on this. And 275 would be 25 times 11. Okay, so we have common factor of 25 here. And if it took you a little longer to factor those, that's totally okay. I did that kind of quickly in my head, but these are pretty big numbers. If you had to work on factoring 275 and factoring 1,000 and canceling common factors, it's totally fine if it takes you 2 or 3 steps to simplify that. But for us, I think we're finished, because this would give us a ratio of 11 out of 40, or 11 over 40. So 27.5% is the same as 11 over 40 expressed as a fraction. So anyways, hopefully that helps you better understand how to convert fractions into percentages and percentages into fractions. Basically everything revolves around this table here. Percentages to fractions is one step and is very fast and easy. Fractions into percentages requires that you kind of pass through converting them into decimals first.